Good morning and welcome to Bali. In this video, I'm going to try and give you a breakdown of how you can move to Bali, how I've just done it, and the cost of things, the cost of living, how you can find accommodation, where to stay, everything like that. I've just been through this over the last couple months, figuring out how to stay here for long term, because after traveling for the last 8 years, going through 100 countries, I've now decided to stop and get a proper base, and that for me is Bali, because it's, for me, the best place in the world. And if you feel the same, if you think you might think the same, then I'm going to show you in this video how you can move to Bali. I just want to say a quick thank you to G2A.com for sponsoring this video. They're actually doing something very cool right now that I want to show you, but we'll get to that part later. Right, so the very first thing is, if you haven't been here before, then of course you're going to want to come here and check it out for yourself. And I definitely recommend this for everyone. Come for a month, book a month, travel around, see which areas you'd like and where you'd like to stay long term. And now, especially for your first month, if you're trying to figure out the lay of the land here, you're probably going to want to book somewhere for a month or at least a couple weeks to give you an idea of the place you're thinking about moving to. Now, a couple of options are either Airbnb or hotel sites like Booking.com, and they both have benefits and they both have different levels of costs. I actually think more recently Airbnb has become a lot more expensive than hotels and Booking.com in Bali. I mean, you can get nice hotels here for like $20-30 a night with everything included, and to get your own villa here on Airbnb, you'll be looking at $2,000 to $3,000 a month. So there's quite a big difference there, and you can actually get very nice hotels. The reason for that is that a lot of people are wanting to stay here long term, so all of the longer term lettings or the villas are in pretty short supply, but there's still lots of hotels available because it is a big tourist island. It is worth staying in a villa, especially if you've got a family or if you can afford it. Then a villa is much nicer than staying in a hotel because you're able to cook up, have your own pool, private space and whatever. But if you're looking for more of a budget option, then I think hotels and guest houses are still the way to go at first. Now, once you've decided you want to stay here long term, you need to try and find a long-term villa that isn't on Airbnb. Now, one great way of doing this is through the Facebook groups. For every area here, there are different Facebook groups with long-term villa lettings, also monthly lettings, and I'll put a link to one of them below. You can go have a look. There's ones like Canggu Community Housing, Uluwatu Housing. They have all the different areas of Bali. You can go into Facebook groups and people will post up the places that become available. And the normal way here to do it is to pay for a year up front. So that means even if you're renting for a year, it will still be only like a 1 year rolling contract. Sometimes they do longer contracts than that, but if you want a 1 year rolling contract, you do have to pay that a whole year up front. So it is a big chunk. Now, if you do want to pay monthly, that's still an option, but it's a little bit more expensive. So if you want decent rates, you do need to pay a year up front. There are also some other websites online. The one that I used recently, I'll also put in the description below. It's called Bali Coconut Living. This is how we found our villa that I'm going to show you at the end of this video. I think Facebook groups are usually the way to go because you'll get the place hopefully without an agent, and that's still a way to deal directly with people rather than going through the letting websites. But in our case, our agent was great and we did find a place relatively quickly. So there's a few things to look out for in a villa, and this changes all the time. So if you are looking, or if you have any other tips, then put them in the comments below for other people to learn from. But from what I've found is you need to look out for construction, and there's a lot of construction going on in Bali all the time, so it's not necessarily something you can always avoid. But if you're about to move in somewhere and there is construction there already, or you know there's about to be, then that means there's probably going to be construction there for at least a few months, 6 months, and it's just obviously if you're only here for a year, you probably want to avoid that place. One way to avoid construction is by booking a place where everything is already built around it. And you know, if everything's built there, it's already a bit built up, you know, there's probably not going to be that much construction to bother you. Now, there are different zones in Bali. I think it's red, yellow and green zone. Green zone is protected. I think yellow, some of it can be built on or it's about to be built on, and then red is, I think it's red anyway, but you get the idea. It's worth finding out what zone your villa or your prospective villa or plot of land that you're planning to get is in, because then that'll give you an idea of how much building is going to be going on around you. Now, you've probably heard already, if you're watching this video, that the cost of renting has gone kind of insane in the last year, and it is true. It's very difficult to find anywhere that's as cheap as it was a couple years ago, and I don't think it will stay that way forever, but who knows. So it's just something to be aware of, that the market is very hot right now. For example, our villa that we're moving into in a couple days time, and at the end of this video, we put down the deposit before even getting to see it. And then, quite luckily, after we got to see it, it was a very nice place and it was a good price for us. But even by the time we then got to see it 24 hours later, the owner had 4 other offers. So that just shows you how crazy the market is. Where to stay? Now, this is a big one. Obviously, like, if you've been to Bali already, you might already have an idea, but if you don't, I'd say there are 4 or 5 main places that people choose to stay long term. The first one, and probably the most famous one, is Canggu. This kind of really rose to fame in the last 4 or 5 years, where it became like a digital nomad hotspot. Everyone's moving across to Canggu, and because of that, it's got very built up very quickly. First time I came here, I think, was 2015, 2016, and Canggu was barely even a thing there. There was just there was a couple bars, there was Old Man's and Deus, and the rest of it was rice fields. Now it's like unrecognizable, it's completely built up, there's loads of good cafes and co-working space and great nightlife, but it's also very built up, so it's not exactly what it used to be and what people loved it for, which is why, although it's still a great place to stay, it's still where we're gonna be, because it does have great accommodation options. There's actually a place next to it called Paranan, which I think now is one of the most sought after areas because it's like Canggu used to be. It's got all of the gorgeous rice fields everywhere, these amazing views, and still some really nice cafes and coffee shops popping up, but just not as built up yet as Canggu. The only problem with that, even though it is beautiful and it's a great place, is that most places that you're going to book long term in Paranan are probably going to have some construction going on next to them. And for example, we were about to get a place and then we went and looked at it, and then literally across the road there was a massive construction project and it's going to be going on for the next 6 months. So even though this villa was beautiful, we were like, do we want to hear that every day? So that's just something to be aware of. There's also areas further up from Paranan again called Chimagi and Sessi, which again are beautiful and incredible views, local rice field views, but the price you pay for that is you'll probably have construction going on. Outside of that, you've got down south, Uluwatu, Jimbaran, the Bucket area, and that again is absolutely beautiful. There's not as much of a built-up digital nomad culture or as many people staying there long term as there is in Canggu, but you do get gorgeous views, amazing beaches, and that's where all of like the blue water cliff top restaurants and stuff are. So it is a beautiful place. For me, I prefer to be up around Canggu and then go down there for the weekend, but it is still a beautiful place to stay long term, and maybe somewhere even nicer if you had a family, because you can get some really nice 2-3 bedroom villas down there. Next up is a famous place, Ubud, and it's a different side of Bali, I'd say. It's much more like hippie chic, much more like jungle vibes, that sort of thing. So if that's your idea of Bali, then that's probably the place for you. If you want more of like a nightlife, beachy culture with the surf, then it's probably Canggu. But those are 2 of the main places, I think. Ubud can be a bit cheaper than Canggu. I'd say Canggu still has the highest rent on the island right now, and Ubud can be a lot cheaper, especially for hotels and guest houses. And lastly, Sanur, which is a place that not so many people are going to, but is a great long-term place, and then there's lots of expats that live over there. There's lots of families that move there because it's only 40 minutes away from Canggu and from Seminyak, from Kuta. I think 40 minutes from Ubud as well. So it's a fairly decent location on the east coast of Bali, but it is actually a lot cheaper for rent, and there's nice houses there, some nice like beachfront villas you can get for a lot better value than you could over in Canggu. The difference is that there's not as many coffee shops, cafes, cafes, Western co-working spaces, that sort of thing. So it really depends on what you want. And I think it will completely change if you're coming across with a family compared to if you're coming across in your 20s. And you just need to like choose, I mean, you can have a family in your 20s obviously, but I mean, if you're coming across single and looking to party, is a completely different thing to if you have a family, of course. I think each area has their own charm, so it's worth coming over for a month first and checking out all the different places that you could call home. Visa options. Now the visa most of you, that's another thing to be aware of. Bike noises is always going on, you can't avoid it. Right, visa options. The visa most people will come in on is the visa on arrival, and there used to be a free visa that you could come in on, but I don't think that exists anymore after COVID, so now everyone gets the visa on arrival that you pay $30 for, something like that, and then that's extendable. That's for 30 days, and that's extendable for another 30 days. The only problem with that one is after 60 days, you have to fly out and fly back in to renew it. You can do that as many times as you want, apparently. There's not any, it's a bit of a grey area, but you can do that. I think a slightly better option if you're going to be here longer term is the B211 visa, and you can get this both onshore and offshore. And the offshore visa, which you'll need to come in on, so you need to come in on this B211 visa, will give you up to 6 months here, and then you can extend it with the onshore one twice for another 6 months at a time. So that means you could stay on the island for 18 months without having to leave once, just by getting the B211 visa rather than the tourist visa. There's also KITAS, which is another option if you're staying here longer. Yeah, I think there's a hold, which is basically gives you the same sort of rights as an Indonesian citizen, means you can own land here, work here, do various things depending on what visa you've got. But that's something to look at if you're staying longer, because it is a little bit more expensive, and it's just something to be aware of, that there is another option if you're going to stay here for longer term. There's loads of visa agents all around here. The one I use is Bali Visas, so I'll put them in the description below as well. Go and check them out. Again, none of these are affiliate links, it's just these are the services that I use and I think they're great. And now I want to break down some of the cost of living, of how much it's going to cost you to actually live here in Bali. Now the very first thing is, because I've now stopped traveling, I used to love gaming and I haven't had a chance to do it over the last few years, but now it means I can. Very first thing I'm going to do is get a PS5 and play some games on my laptop, which brings me to G2A.com. Shameless segue. So G2A.com is an online website to be able to get massive discounts on things like games, Airbnb, Amazon gift cards, and they're doing a Christmas campaign right now, which is what I want to show you in this little section of this video. So if you go through to their advent calendar right now, which the link will be in the description below, I'm going to show you how this works. You can see here they had GTA 5, G2A, GTA, but anyway, I'm not related. GTA 5 minus 72% off, so I could have got that right then. Unfortunately, it's expired, so you'll have to go and have a look and see which ones are still available. Let's click on this one. Here you go, reveal the deal. No Man's Sky, 69% off. So rather than paying the full price that you'd have to pay in Steam, for example, you can go here and get 69% off No Man's Sky PC game for $18. Go check it out for yourself and you can get massive discounts. They've also got a whole gift section here as well for Uber credit, FIFA 23, which is definitely what I'm going to be getting, and various other things, gifts for her, gifts for him, Amazon gift card. Go have a look. Okay, but I do actually want to break down the cost of living for living in Bali. The biggest expense you're going to have is your accommodation, and obviously the flights to get here, but if you're staying here longer time, then those flights are kind of negligible. But your rent is going to be the most expensive thing you pay here. And you can spend a lot of money, but the truth is the cost of living is quite low that you don't have to. Even if you end up paying $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 for your villa or whatever, you won't spend anything near that on the rest of your cost of living expenses. So I'm going to go through them. The first is obviously going to be your food, groceries, restaurant food, nightlife, all of that. It really depends. You can spend as much or as little as you want. Like, you can quite easily get local food here for $20,000 to $30,000 a meal, which is roughly $1 to $2. I think 15,000 is $1. So for $2, you could quite easily get a delicious Indonesian meal. And if you want to, you can go up to $10 a dish, 150,000. Now you'd be hard pressed to find that most places, but there are definitely restaurants where you can. For the most part, you'll be spending, for 2 people, after already being here for a couple months and being here for years previous, it's usually around $15 a meal for 2 people, including your drinks. And if you spend more on alcohol, then obviously that goes up. But in general, 15 bucks a meal, eat out twice a day, and then maybe have breakfast at home, or have one of them at home with cereal, granola, eggs, or whatever. But if you eat out twice a day, $30 a day, for 2 of you, $900 a month, $450 each. And that's conservative, but you'd be, most months that's what you're gonna spend. Now, one interesting thing is that drinks here are usually the same price as meals, or there or thereabouts. Like a meal in lots of places would be 60, 70,000, and then a mocktail or a smoothie will also be like 40, 50,000. So actually, like, it's comparable, which is strange coming from other countries in the West and probably Australia and like Europe, where a drink is usually a lot cheaper than a restaurant meal. But here they're kind of even. So if you do want to save a bit of money, then just skip the smoothie and have water, for example, instead. Groceries are surprisingly expensive if you want Western stuff. The supermarkets around here are called Pepito, and they actually have a massive markup on anything that's imported. Like if I walk around the supermarket here, sometimes I'm like, what? How is this so expensive? And they mix in a lot of the imported expensive stuff with the other local stuff, so if you're not careful, you end up spending loads on groceries. And I think that's because a lot of people don't cook, so actually going out to the grocery store is a little bit like more luxury. You're craving those like things you haven't had in a long time. It's all imported stuff, so it's like, yeah, okay, I'll splurge a little bit extra on that because I really miss it. For the most part, it's usually cheaper just to eat out. And there are obviously, like, you can go to local markets, local supermarkets, and if you're just buying local Indonesian stuff, then it is still relatively cheap. But for your imported stuff, it's actually quite expensive to shop at grocery stores, in my opinion. The next is transport. The easiest way and best way if you're going to be here long term is 100% to rent a scooter. Even if you're a little bit scared when you first get here, the quicker you can get out of the way and get yourself on a scooter, just the much better experience you're going to have overall. And I mean, you just really need to. It makes, I think there's like, even when I have like friends come over, there's 2 ways of experiencing Bali, in my opinion. One is with a scooter and one is without. Because if you can drive yourself around, you have so much more freedom than relying on taxis and grab apps and all of that. And if you get taxis often, you do get stuck in a lot of traffic as well. So the best way is to rent a scooter, and to do it long term, you'll be looking at $50 a month. There's all sorts of varying deals you can get, but around $2 a day, so like 50 to 60 bucks a month would be a good deal for longer term. If you're doing it short term, you'll pay more than that, maybe $4 or $5 a day, and also it depends on what type of scooter you get. You could get like the basic Vario Honda ones, or you could get an M-Max, which you can pay more for, but really anything between $2, $3 a day for a month is a good deal. So that'll put you about, depending on what scooter you get, 50 to 100 bucks a month. Now, if you don't want to drive a scooter, you can also obviously rent a car. I don't know about that myself, but I would look into it, see how much renting a car costs, or you can rely on taxis that are also very cheap. I mean, you won't pay more than $6, $7 for a taxi ride around most parts of Bali. You can do that on apps like Grab and Gojek, which are really easy, just like Uber. Phone and data, i.e. SIM cards. The best one is Telkomsel. It's about $10 for a month of something like 20 to 30 gigabytes. I don't even know how much you actually get, but it's really easy to top up. You can go to any phone store around here and they'll tell you how to do it, sort it out for you. And it costs about 150,000, so about $10, and that's more than you'll use the whole month. Same for getting Wi-Fi in your place. Obviously, if you're doing Airbnb or short-term rental, they already have that sorted. But if you're gonna go longer term, then it's usually around 500,000 a month for, which is about $35 for good internet. You can obviously pay more for fiber optic and whatever, but nothing more than 50 bucks per month will give you really good Wi-Fi. And then all the extras is basically just down to you. There's cheap massages you can go out and get. You can get a massage in lots of places for $10 and less really easily. There's obviously different nightlife you can go out for. There's trips to the mountains and the volcanoes, and there's trips to going snorkeling, free diving, going across to the islands, which is one of the things I love about Bali, by the way, is you can live here and then just go off for the weekend to either go snorkeling, diving, climb a volcano, go whitewater rafting, go hiking, go to the rice fields, do whatever. There's literally everything on your doorstep. But I wouldn't really put them in as expenses, because that's just amazing things you can do. You don't have to spend on them, but if you want to, you definitely should. Petrol is very cheap, especially if you're on a scooter. To fill up a Vario is like 40,000, so $2.50, and that usually lasts me a few days at least. Like, I mean, again, it's negligible. You'd be spending less than $5 a week. Maid and cleaning and gardeners are also relatively cheap. You can have all of that done for you and you won't be spending much. Obviously it depends on how many times you want to get them in, but something like $10 a session is a good rate, and maybe if you want it twice a week, then that's $20 a week. That's, again, a great expense and a great lifestyle thing to have, because it means you don't have to do all of the gardening, pool maintenance. You don't even have to do your own laundry. You can go out and get all your laundry done for a few dollars for a few kilograms. It's really, really cheap here. And it's those sort of luxuries that make living in Bali, I think, such great value. So it goes back again to, I think, although rent is a lot, it's a good trade-off because everything else is such good value. So if I were to give my proper tips for moving to Bali, I would say come here first for a month, get the lay of the land, or maybe even 2 months, and move around, spend like 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, and like decide what area you really like before deciding on a place for a year. Try Canggu, try Ubud, try Sanur, try Uluwatu, and see what you really like. And then also while doing that, you can get some local connections, some local agents, and try and find a place that hasn't been sat on the marketplace for a long term. Like when a place pops up, people get it really quickly if it's good value. So the best way of doing that is just by being here, and then when something pops up, you can just go view it straight away if you can, put the deposit down, and it's yours. It's really difficult to do that at distance. So if you have the luxury of being here, then definitely do that. And the other thing I'd say is jump in to it. Like if you're coming here, don't just live in the Canggu, go explore the rest of Bali. Learn some bahasa Indonesian. Saya belajar bahasa Indonesian, but sedikit. I'm trying to learn, but I've only just got back here, so I mean, cut me a little slack, but I mean, learn some Indonesian. That's my plan for the next year. Do things that are outside of your comfort zone. If you're gonna live in another country, then embrace that part of the country, embrace the Balinese culture. Don't walk around in singlets or like topless in restaurants. But now I'm just ranting. Is that a tip or a rant? I don't know. But I love it here. I hope this helped. I hope there's something in this that gives some value if you're thinking about moving here, because it is one of the most beautiful parts of the world and a place that I am very happy and lucky to now call home. Thank you for watching. If you have anything else to feed back or any questions, then drop them in the comments and I will answer them best I can. See you in the next video. Oh yeah, I need to introduce you to the villa. This is it. It's moving day. We just got in, and this is our villa. It's a 3-bedroom. You can see inside. I'll take you for a little quick tour at the end of this video, and most of it is enclosed living, which actually I didn't mention, but that is something to consider because it does get very humid and hot, and not all villas have indoor living, but we do. We opted for an enclosed living, and this is the full run through. Yeah, this is it. Welcome to Bali.